When I got fired, my husband posted it online for everyone to see. Embarrassing to be married to someone so useless. Then he served divorce papers, convinced I was worthless now. I signed without a word. Sometimes the best revenge is letting someone discover what they just threw away. I talked to a lawyer Friday, Jasper said, sliding a folded envelope across our dining table. These are divorce papers. I think it's best if we just end this cleanly. It was Sunday night. I'd been unemployed for exactly 3 days. Before we continue, if you've ever been underestimated or dismissed, this story is for you. Please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more people who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. 3 days since my 12-year pharmaceutical career ended in a glass conference room. 3 days since he'd posted on Instagram calling me useless and embarrassing. 3 days since he'd walked out saying he needed to figure out if he married someone who's actually going somewhere. Now he was back with divorce papers sitting across from me, not next to me like a partner but across from me like an opponent in a negotiation. You're serious, I said. Completely serious. I need a partner who can contribute equally. Someone who isn't going to be dead weight. I opened the envelope, scanned the documents. He was asking for spousal support. $3,000 a month for 3 years. He was asking for half the house I'd bought before I even met him. He was asking for half my retirement accounts. The man who'd contributed maybe $30,000 over 4 years of marriage while I'd paid over $400,000 in expenses was asking me for money. I looked up at him. He was watching me with this expression of satisfaction, like he'd finally won something after years of feeling inferior. You want me to sign these? I asked. I think it's the mature thing to do. I stood up, walked to my office, came back with a pen, and I signed every single page. His eyes widened. You're not even going to fight this? I pushed the papers back across the table and smiled. Because what Jasper didn't know, what he was about to discover the hard way, was that I'd already talked to a lawyer too. And mine was better than his. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to Thursday afternoon when everything started falling apart. The notification from HR came at 3:47 p.m. Please report to conference room B at 4:30. Bring your building access card. I'd been in pharmaceutical sales for 12 years. I knew what that message meant. Nobody asks you to bring your access card to a meeting unless they're planning to take it away. I spent the 43 minutes between that email and the meeting time trying to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe it was about the hospital network account I'd just closed. Maybe they wanted to discuss my bonus structure. Maybe this was about the VP position I'd interviewed for 2 weeks ago. But when I walked into that glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Seattle and saw Patricia, my regional manager for 6 years, sitting next to someone from HR I'd never met before, I knew exactly what was happening. Eloise, thank you for coming, the HR woman said. Her name was Deborah or Denise, something with a D. Please have a seat. I sat. Patricia couldn't look at me. She kept her eyes fixed on a spot somewhere near my left shoulder while the HR woman pulled out a folder. We want you to know this is not a reflection of your individual performance, Deborah or Denise began, reading from what was clearly a script. Due to organizational restructuring and strategic realignment, we've made the difficult decision to eliminate the entire West Coast division. 300 positions across 5 states. Your position is among those being eliminated, effective immediately. The words landed like physical blows. 12 years. 12 years of exceeding every quota, mentoring every struggling new hire, building client relationships worth millions in annual revenue. Gone. Your severance package includes 8 weeks of salary plus unused PTO, the HR woman continued, sliding papers across the table. Your benefits continue through the end of next month. We'll need you to clear out your workspace this afternoon and surrender your building access card before you leave. This afternoon. As in right now. As in you have less than an hour to pack up 12 years of your professional life while everyone on this floor watches through these glass walls. Can I have a moment? I asked. They both stood immediately, grateful for the excuse to leave. The door closed with a soft click, and I was alone in that fishbowl conference room with a severance packet and the growing awareness that everyone at their desks outside could see me sitting here. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to reach for it. I texted Jasper, "Let go today. Heading home." The 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared. reappeared, disappeared again. He was typing and deleting, and with each cycle my stomach twisted tighter. Finally, his message came through. Are you kidding me right now? I stared at the screen. Read it twice to make sure I understood correctly. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm so sorry. Not, we'll get through this together. Just, are you kidding me right now? Another text appeared. So what am I supposed to tell people when they ask what my wife does? The question burned through me. He wasn't worried about our mortgage or our future or whether I was okay. He was worried about his image. About what my unemployment said about him. I didn't respond. Just gathered my things and walked to my desk in silence. The cardboard box was already waiting there. Someone from facilities must have brought it up while I was in the meeting. I packed methodically. Coffee mug. Framed photo from our honeymoon. Desk plant. Certificates. The personal items that make a workspace yours. 20 minutes later, I was in the parking garage, sitting in my car with that box on the passenger seat, trying to process what had just happened. That's when my phone buzzed again. Vanessa, is everything okay? Jasper's Instagram story is a lot. My hands were shaking when I opened Instagram. There he was, posed thoughtfully by our living room window in perfect golden hour lighting. The caption made my vision blur. What do you do when the person you married turns out to be completely useless? Embarrassing to be married to someone who can't even hold down a basic job. Questioning everything right now. He'd posted it 40 minutes ago. While I was still in that conference room. While I was packing my desk. While I was processing the end of my 12-year career, he was already telling the internet I was worthless. The post had dozens of likes. Comments from Connor and Madison and Trevor. All his friends who'd watched him slowly tear me down over the past year. Supporting him, telling him he deserved better, encouraging him to know his worth. I screenshot it. Saved it to a folder on my phone that I titled, Evidence, because some part of my brain was already 3 steps ahead, already calculating. Then I drove home through rush hour traffic past the Space Needle, toward the Queen and Craftsman I'd bought 3 years before I even met Jasper. The house that was mine. Legally, morally, financially mine, though he talked about it like he'd built it with his own hands. When I pulled into the driveway, I could see him through the kitchen window. Laptop open. Probably scrolling through the comments on his Instagram post. Probably basking in the validation from people telling him he was right to question our marriage. I grabbed my box and walked inside. He looked up when I set it down on the kitchen island. There was no warmth in his expression. No concern. Just this cold assessment, like he was calculating my new value. So you're really unemployed, he said. This isn't some kind of mistake. The entire West Coast division got eliminated. 300 people. It's real. He closed his laptop slowly, deliberately. We need to talk about what this means for us financially. I actually laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You made $11,000 last year, Jasper. Total. I've been carrying every significant expense since we moved in together. The mortgage, property taxes, insurance, utilities, groceries. Everything. So when you say financially, what exactly are you worried about? His face flushed red. That's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is you couldn't even keep your job. What does that say about you? About your value? The words hung in the air between us. He actually believed this. Believed that corporate restructuring was somehow proof of my inadequacy. That getting laid off made me a failure. He stood up, grabbed his jacket. I need to process this. Figure out if I married someone who's actually going somewhere or just someone who couldn't cut it in the real world. Then he walked out. Just left. Got in his car and drove away like I'd personally offended him by losing my job. I stood there in our kitchen. My kitchen in my house, staring at that cardboard box. And I thought about his text. What am I supposed to tell people when they ask what my wife does? That's when something shifted. Some fundamental understanding clicked into place. This marriage was already over. I just needed to make it official. I opened my laptop and started looking at our financial situation with completely clear eyes. The house. Mine, purchased 3 years before our wedding. The investment accounts, the retirement funds, the savings. All separate property. Washington was a community property state, but separate property acquired before marriage stayed separate. Then I called Lauren, my business attorney. Left a message asking for the best divorce lawyer in Seattle. She called back within 20 minutes. Rachel Thornton. She's expensive, she's ruthless, and she will absolutely protect everything that's yours. I called Rachel immediately. Told her everything. The layoff, the Instagram post, Jasper's text, his comments about my value. The separate accounts. The house in my name only. The massive income disparity. How much has he contributed financially over your marriage? Rachel asked. Maybe 30,000 total over 4 years. And you? Over 400,000. There was a pause. Then Rachel's voice came back with barely contained satisfaction. He has no case. I'll prepare paperwork this weekend. How fast do you want to move? Fast. That was Friday afternoon. I spent the weekend at Vanessa's, avoiding Jasper, letting him think I was falling apart. And now here we were Sunday night and he'd beaten me to it by exactly 2 days. But as I signed those divorce papers with steady hands and watched his expression shift from satisfaction to confusion, I knew something he didn't. Mine were better. My lawyer was better. My case was airtight. And by the time he figured that out, it would already be too late. I started packing a suitcase the moment he left with those signed divorce papers. Jasper stood in the bedroom doorway watching me fold clothes with an expression I couldn't quite read. Confusion mixed with something that looked almost like panic. You're really just going to leave? Just like that? I didn't look up from the drawer where I was gathering essentials. You just served me divorce papers. What exactly did you expect? I expected, I don't know, some kind of reaction. Some fight. You got your reaction. I signed. I moved to the closet, pulling out my good work blouses. This is what you wanted. What about the house? Now I did look at him. What about it? We need to discuss the division of assets. The equity, Your lawyer can discuss it with my lawyer. I folded a cashmere sweater carefully, placed it in the suitcase. I'm sure they'll have a very productive conversation about community property law. His face went pale. You have a lawyer? Did you think I wouldn't? I could see him processing this, trying to recalculate whatever strategy he'd mapped out with his bargain rate attorney. He'd assumed I'd be devastated, desperate, willing to accept whatever terms he offered just to make the pain stop. Instead, I was packing like I was going on a business trip. Where are you going? He asked. Not your concern anymore. I called Vanessa from the driveway. Can I stay with you for a few days? Of course. What happened? Jasper served me with divorce papers. I'll explain when I get there. Vanessa lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, and she met me at the door with wine already poured. We sat on her couch and I told her everything, not just about the divorce papers but about Thursday afternoon in that glass conference room, about Jasper's texts, about the Instagram post that had started this entire cascade. Wait, Vanessa said, setting down her wine glass. He posted that while you were still processing getting fired. 40 minutes after I texted him. Didn't even wait to talk to me first. She pulled out her phone, found his Instagram. The post was still up, now with over 100 likes and dozens of comments. She scrolled through them, her expression darkening with each swipe. These people are garbage, she muttered. Connor's commenting like he has any room to judge anyone. Madison saying you know your worth. She's never worked a real job in her life, her parents pay for everything. Screenshot it, I said. All of it. Vanessa looked at me. Why? Because I'm building a case. I spent that evening on Vanessa's couch with my laptop open, going through Jasper's Instagram with fresh eyes. It was like seeing a completely different narrative than the one I'd been living. There were posts from 8 months ago, carefully staged photos of our living room with captions about creating authentic spaces, even though I'd picked and paid for every piece of furniture. Posts from 6 months ago showing his morning routine, with elaborate breakfast spreads I'd never seen him make, coffee in artisanal mugs, natural light streaming through windows, all captioned with quotes about intentional living and creative practice. 3 months ago he'd posted a photo of himself at his laptop with the caption, working on something real while the world chases corporate validation. There's a difference between having a job and having a purpose. I remembered that day. I'd been in Portland closing a major hospital account that would earn me a $40,000 commission. He'd been home arranging props for Instagram photos. The pattern was everywhere once I started looking. Subtle digs about corporate life, and selling your soul for a paycheck, and people who measure worth in dollars. He'd been building this narrative for months, the enlightened creative married to the corporate sellout, and I'd been too busy actually earning money to notice. I screenshot every post, every caption, every comment thread where he'd subtly positioned himself as morally superior while I funded his lifestyle. Then I opened our bank statements. Joint checking showed my monthly deposits. $4,000 like clockwork, covering mortgage, property taxes, insurance, utilities, everything. His contributions were sporadic. 200 here, 300 there, occasionally 500 when he landed a small freelance project. I pulled up our tax returns going back 4 years. The numbers were even more damning than I remembered. Year 1 of marriage. I made $192,000. He made $31,000. Year 2. I made $208,000. He made $18,000. Year 3. I made $223,000. He made $14,000. Year 4. Last year. I made $237,000. He made $11,000. 4 years. 4 years of me building a career while he built an Instagram aesthetic. 4 years of me carrying every significant expense while he contributed maybe 7% of our household costs. And now he had the audacity to serve me with divorce papers asking for spousal support and half of everything. My phone rang. Unknown number but Seattle area code. I answered. Eloise Brennan? Speaking. This is Rachel Thornton. Lauren Michaels gave me your information. She mentioned you needed representation for a divorce matter. Rachel's voice had a quality I can only describe as sharp competence. The sound of someone who'd built a career on winning and wasn't interested in wasting time. Yes, I said. My husband served me with papers tonight. I signed them, but I need to file a response. You signed them. There was a pause. Without representation? I wanted him to think I was broken, desperate, willing to accept whatever he offered. Another pause, then something that might have been a laugh. Smart. Tell me everything. I spent the next 40 minutes walking Rachel through my marriage. The income disparity. The house I'd bought before we met. The separate accounts. The Instagram post. The text messages. The divorce papers asking for spousal support and half of assets he'd never contributed to. How much has he contributed financially over the course of your marriage? Rachel asked. I did the math quickly in my head. Maybe $30,000 total. I'd need to check the exact numbers, but that's generous. And you? Over $400,000. Mortgage payments alone are $3,200 a month. Then property taxes, insurance, renovations, utilities, groceries, everything. Send me documentation. Bank statements, tax returns, property deeds, everything you have. I'll prepare a counter-petition. How quickly can we move? I can have papers drafted by Monday morning. We'll file a response that makes his requests look as ridiculous as they are. Washington is a community property state, but separate property stays separate. The house is yours. Your retirement accounts and savings, if they're funded with premarital money or kept separate, those are yours. The only community property is whatever's in your joint accounts. About $12,000, I said. So he's asking for $3,000 a month in spousal support for 3 years. That's over $100,000 total. Plus half a house he never paid for, plus half your retirement accounts, in exchange for $6,000 of community property. That's correct. Rachel's voice took on a tone of barely contained satisfaction. This is going to be fun. Get me that documentation tonight if possible. I want to move fast. I spent the next 2 hours forwarding everything to Rachel. Bank statements. Tax returns. The property deed showing I'd purchased the house 3 years before our wedding. Investment account statements showing deposits that predated our marriage. Screenshots of Jasper's Instagram posts and the cruel comments. His text messages from Thursday. Every piece of evidence that would prove exactly who had built this life and who had just lived in it. Around midnight, Vanessa came out of her bedroom to find me still on the couch with my laptop. You should try to sleep, she said gently. I will. I just need to finish this. She sat down next to me. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you okay? Like actually okay? Because you're being very calm about all this and I'm worried you're in shock or something. I closed my laptop and looked at her. I'm not in shock. I'm angry. But I'm also relieved? Is that terrible? No, Vanessa said. It's not terrible. I think I've known for a while that this marriage was over. I just didn't want to admit it. And then he went and made it so easy. By serving you with divorce papers? By showing me exactly who he is. By posting that Instagram story and sending those texts and sitting across from me tonight talking about how I'm dead weight. He gave me clarity. Vanessa squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I never liked him. I thought he was using you, but you seemed happy, so I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't happy, I admitted. I was comfortable. There's a difference. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Rachel Thornton, already working at midnight on a Sunday. Reviewed your documentation. His case is weaker than I thought. We'll destroy this. Get some sleep, you're going to need your energy for what comes next. I smiled, closed my laptop, and finally let myself breathe. Because somewhere in the chaos of the last 3 days, losing my job, being publicly humiliated, getting served with divorce papers, I'd found something unexpected. I'd found my spine. And I was about to use it. I woke up Monday morning in Vanessa's guest room to an email from Rachel sent at 6:47 a.m. Counter petition drafted. Review attached and confirm by 10 a.m. if you want me to file today. Also, avoid all contact with your husband. Do not respond to texts, calls, or social media. Let him sit in uncertainty. The attached document was 32 pages of legal precision that systematically dismantled every claim in Jasper's filing. I read it twice over coffee, feeling something close to satisfaction with each paragraph. The house, separate property, purchased 3 years before marriage, entirely funded by Eloise Brennan with premarital assets. No community property claim. Retirement and investment accounts. Separate property funded with premarital earnings and maintained in separate accounts throughout marriage. No community property claim. Spousal support, denied. Marriage duration of 4 years with significant income disparity throughout. Petitioner contributed approximately 7% of household expenses while respondent contributed 93%. No basis for support. Community property. Joint checking account containing approximately $12,000, to be divided equally. I sent Rachel my approval at 8:15 a.m. By noon, her assistant had filed it with the court. He'll be served by end of day tomorrow, Rachel texted. Radio silence until then. Let him wonder what you're doing. Tuesday morning I had other things on my mind. My phone rang at 9:23 a.m. with a number I'd been half expecting, half dreading for 2 weeks. I stepped out onto Vanessa's balcony to take the call. Eloise Brennan? Speaking. This is Richard Kaufman from Western Biopharm. We met 2 weeks ago about the VP of West Coast Operations position. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Yes, I remember. Good to hear from you, Richard. I'll cut to the chase. We'd like to offer you the position. $185,000 base, performance bonuses that typically run another $60,000 to $80,000 annually, full benefits package, stock options, start date 3 weeks from today if that works for your timeline. I had to sit down. Yes. That works perfectly. Excellent. I know your previous company eliminated your division last week. I want you to know that was part of our due diligence, and frankly, it speaks to their financial mismanagement, not your performance. Your track record is exceptional. We'd be lucky to have you. We spent another 15 minutes discussing logistics. Start date, relocation assistance even though I was staying in Seattle, team structure, reporting relationships. When we hung up, I just sat there on Vanessa's balcony watching traffic move through Capitol Hill and trying to process what had just happened. Everything Jasper had said, about me being useless, about not being able to hold down a job, about being dead weight. All of it proven wrong in one phone call. And he had no idea. I called Rachel immediately. The VP position came through. I start in 3 weeks. There was a pause, then Rachel's voice came back with unmistakable satisfaction. Perfect timing. Since this offer came after you were served with divorce papers, it's completely separate from marital assets. Your future earnings are none of his business. Don't tell him. Don't post about it. Let him find out when it's too late to matter. I won't say a word. Good. He's being served with our counterpetition this afternoon. Expect him to call. Don't answer. Let every communication go through me. I spent the rest of Tuesday at Vanessa's apartment, working on my laptop, updating my resume, responding to LinkedIn messages from former colleagues who'd heard about the layoff. My phone buzzed periodically with texts from Jasper. We should talk about logistics. When are you planning to get your stuff from the house? Can you at least respond so I know you're okay? I ignored all of them. Rachel's advice was sound. Let him sit in uncertainty. Let him wonder what I was planning. Wednesday afternoon my phone rang. Jasper. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was 4 minutes long, and his tone had shifted from annoyed to confused to something approaching panic. Eloise, I just got served with some legal papers from your attorney. I don't understand, you signed my petition. We agreed to end this cleanly. Why are you making this complicated? These papers are saying I'm not entitled to anything, that the house is yours, that I only get half of joint checking. That's not how community property works. We need to talk. Call me back. I forwarded the voicemail to Rachel without comment. She called me an hour later. His attorney just contacted me. They want to negotiate. Apparently, Mr. Hartwell was under the impression that signing his petition meant you were agreeing to his terms. What did you tell them? That your signature acknowledged receipt of his petition, not agreement to its terms. That's what counterpetitions are for. They seem surprised. By what? That you hired competent representation. I think they expected you to roll over. I thought about Jasper sitting across from me Sunday night, watching me sign those papers with that expression of satisfaction, like he'd finally won something. He'd expected me to fall apart. To accept whatever terms he offered just to make the pain stop. Instead, I'd hired Rachel Thornton. What happens now? I asked. They'll review our petition and come back with a settlement offer. Could take a few days. In the meantime, maintain radio silence. Don't respond to his calls or texts. Don't engage on social media. Let him stew. Saturday morning, Vanessa found me on her couch with my laptop, scrolling through apartment listings. What are you doing? Looking for a place. I can't stay here forever. She sat down next to me. You can stay as long as you need. But also, are you looking to rent or buy? I don't know yet. Depends on what I get from the divorce settlement. Vanessa was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, Can I ask you something? Are you actually okay? Because you've been through a lot this week and you're being very composed about all of it. I closed my laptop. Honestly, I'm better than okay. Is that weird? Maybe a little. I feel like I've been holding my breath for years and I can finally exhale. Does that make sense? It does, Vanessa said. But I'm still worried about you. Don't be. I have a plan. What kind of plan? I smiled. The kind where I let Jasper think he's winning right up until the moment he realizes he's lost. Sunday afternoon, Rachel called with an update. His attorney reached out with a settlement proposal. They're dropping the request for the house and retirement accounts. They're asking for $25,000 cash and his half of joint checking. That's still more than he deserves. Agreed. But it tells us he's scared. He knows his original petition was absurd and he's trying to salvage something. I recommend we counter with $6,000, his half of joint checking, and 30 days to vacate the property. If he doesn't accept, we go to court and present 4 years of financial records showing he contributed 7% of household expenses while living in a house he couldn't afford on his own. Do it. One more thing. He's still posting on Instagram. Nothing about the divorce directly, but vague posts about toxic people and knowing when to walk away from negativity. His friends are eating it up. Let him. It'll make it that much better when reality hits. That night, I lay in Vanessa's guest room thinking about the week I'd just lived through. 7 days ago, I'd walked into that glass conference room and watched my career dissolve. I'd driven home to a husband who called me useless on Instagram before I'd even processed what happened. I'd been served with divorce papers that tried to take half of everything I'd built. Now I had a VP position starting in 3 weeks. Now I had a lawyer who was systematically destroying Jasper's case. Now I had clarity about who I'd married and what I needed to do next. My phone buzzed. Wait. He accepted the counteroffer. 6,030 days to vacate. We'll finalize the settlement agreement this week. Congratulations, Eloise. You just divorced your husband for the price of his half of joint checking. I smiled in the darkness of that guest room. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just letting someone underestimate you right up until the moment they realize their mistake. And by then it's already too late. The settlement agreement arrived via email on Wednesday morning, and I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Jasper would receive $6,000, his half of our joint checking account, and had 30 days to vacate the property. Everything else stayed mine. The house, the retirement accounts, the investment funds, all of it. 4 years of marriage dissolved for the price of half a joint checking account. Sign and return by end of day, Rachel's email said. And congratulations. You just won your divorce for $6,000. I signed it in Vanessa's living room with my morning coffee still warm in my hand, scanned it back to Rachel, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Lightness. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize was there until it was gone. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jasper's attorney. Please coordinate with my client regarding retrieval of your personal belongings from the marital residence. He'll be home Saturday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I forwarded it to Rachel without responding. She called me 5 minutes later. Don't go alone. Bring someone with you. Keep it quick and professional. Don't engage in any conversations about the divorce or finances. In and out. Saturday morning, Vanessa drove me to Queen Anne. The neighborhood looked exactly the same. Tree-lined streets, expensive strollers, people walking dogs that probably cost more than most people's rent. But everything felt different now. This wasn't home anymore. It was just a house I needed to collect my things from. Jasper's car was in the driveway when we pulled up. You want me to come in with you? Vanessa asked. Please. He opened the door before we could knock and I barely recognized him. He'd always been meticulous about his appearance, part of the carefully curated Instagram aesthetic, but now he looked like he'd been sleeping in his clothes. Unshaven, hair uncombed, eyes red-rimmed. Hey, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I'm just here to get my things. Yeah. Of course. He stepped aside to let us in. I'll be upstairs if you need anything. The house smelled stale, like he hadn't opened the windows in days. Dishes were piled in the sink. Mail was scattered across the kitchen island. The carefully curated aesthetic he'd maintained for Instagram had completely collapsed. I moved through the rooms methodically with Vanessa, packing boxes with items that were undeniably mine. Books from before the marriage. Artwork I'd purchased. Clothes from my closet. The good kitchen knives I'd bought. My grandmother's china that had been in storage. Jasper came downstairs while we were loading the second round of boxes into Vanessa's SUV. Eloise, can we talk for a minute? I looked at Vanessa. She nodded and headed back inside to get another box. I don't think that's a good idea, I said. Just 1 minute. Please. There was something in his voice that made me stop. Not the arrogance from 2 weeks ago, not the cold assessment. Just exhaustion. 1 minute. He ran his hand through his uncombed hair. I didn't think you'd actually leave. You served me with divorce papers. I don't know what I thought. That you'd fight for us. That you'd try to convince me to stay. I stared at him. You posted on Instagram that I was useless and embarrassing. You texted me asking what you were supposed to tell people about your unemployed wife. You sat across from me and called me dead weight. What exactly was I supposed to fight for? I was angry. I was scared about money, about the future. You were scared about money, I repeated. You who contributed maybe $30,000 over 4 years while I paid for everything. You were scared about money. His face flushed. I know I didn't contribute as much financially. 7%, Jasper. You contributed 7% of our household expenses. And then you tried to take half of everything I built. My lawyer said I was entitled. Your lawyer was wrong. And expensive, I'm guessing. How much did this divorce cost you? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I need to finish packing, I said. Where are you going to live? Not your concern. Eloise. We're done, Jasper. Sign the settlement agreement if you haven't already. Take your $6,000 and move on with your life. $6,000 doesn't even cover first and last month's rent anywhere decent. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just nothing. Then I guess you should have thought about that before you posted on Instagram that I was useless. I walked back inside before he could respond. Vanessa and I finished packing in silence. When we loaded the last box into her SUV, I took one final walk through the house. The house I'd bought at 26 with money I'd earned through 70-hour weeks and impossible quotas. The house I'd filled with furniture and artwork, and the life I thought I was building. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a stage set for a play that had closed. I left my keys on the kitchen counter and walked out without looking back. Monday morning, I put on my best suit and drove to my new office in downtown Seattle. Western Biopharm occupied floors 12 through 15 of a glass tower with views of Puget Sound. My office was on 14-corner suite with enough space for a proper desk, a small meeting table and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the water. Richard Kaufman met me in the lobby at 8:30 sharp. "Eloise. Welcome." He shook my hand firmly. "Ready for the whirlwind tour?" "Absolutely." He introduced me to what felt like 50 people in the span of an hour. My direct reports: 3 regional managers covering California, Oregon and Washington and Arizona and Nevada. The finance team. The marketing director. The head of operations. Names and faces blurred together, but I smiled and shook hands and made mental notes about who seemed engaged and who seemed skeptical about the new VP. "Conference room C has the best white boards," Richard said as we walked through the 14th floor. "Conference room A has the good coffee machine. Someone's personal espresso setup that they're weirdly protective of. Kitchen on this floor has the decent snacks. 15th floor has the really good snacks but you have to deal with the executives." I laughed. "Good to know. One more thing." He stopped outside my office door. "I heard you had a rough transition out of your last role. Company eliminated your division, bunch of people let go all at once." "That's right. I want you to know that's part of why we moved quickly on your hire. Your track record is exceptional. 12 years of consistently exceeding quotas, mentoring new talent, building long-term client relationships. Companies that eliminate performers like you are companies with bigger problems than staffing. Their loss, our gain." Something in my chest loosened. "Thank you. That means a lot." "Well, you're here now." He smiled. "Let's do good work." My first week was a blur of meetings and strategy sessions and late nights reviewing client files. The team I'd inherited was strong but overstretched. 3 regional managers trying to cover too much territory with too few resources. I spent my days identifying gaps and opportunities, my evenings building presentations for the executive team about where we needed to invest. On Friday afternoon, I closed my laptop and looked out my office windows at Puget Sound. The water was dark blue under clear skies, ferries moving between Seattle and the islands, mountains visible in the distance. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "How was your first week?" "Exhausting." "Perfect. Exactly what I needed." "Dinner tonight?" "I want to hear everything." 7. "Perfect." I gathered my things, laptop files, the coffee mug that said, Vice President Western Operations, that had been waiting on my desk Monday morning, and headed out. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. Professional. Competent. Whole. Not someone's useless wife. Not a layoff statistic. Not someone who just lost half of everything to a divorce. Just me. Finally, completely, undeniably me. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, that felt like enough. Dinner with Vanessa that Friday night turned into apartment hunting by Saturday morning. "You can stay with me as long as you want," she said over coffee at her kitchen table. "But I also found 3 listings you should see. One's a condo in Capitol Hill, 2-bedroom. Another's a loft downtown. And there's this place in Belltown with water views that just came on the market yesterday." I pulled up the listings on my phone. The Belltown condo stopped me cold, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, hardwood floors, a kitchen that actually had counter space instead of the cramped galley setup most Seattle apartments offered. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,200 square feet of clean, modern space with none of the ornate details Jasper had insisted made our queen and house characterful. "This one," I said, pointing to the screen. "It's $450, Vanessa said carefully. "That's not cheap. I'll pay cash." Her eyes widened. "Cash? Eloise, are you?" "I have the money. Had it before Jasper, kept it separate during the marriage. It's mine." We saw the condo that afternoon. The real estate agent, a woman named Claire with a sharp bob and sharper instincts, walked us through the space while sunlight poured through those massive windows, turning the hardwood floors honey gold. "It's been on the market for 36 hours, Claire said. "I've already scheduled 4 showings for tomorrow. If you're serious, you need to move fast." I stood at the windows looking out at the bay, watching ferries cross between Seattle and the islands, and I knew. "I'll take it. Full asking price, cash offer," Close in 10 days if the seller agrees. Claire's professional composure cracked just slightly. I'll draw up the paperwork immediately. The offer was accepted by Sunday evening. I closed the following Friday, exactly 10 days after my first week at Western Biofarm, and spent the weekend moving in with help from Vanessa, Cara, and 2 other friends from my college days who'd driven up from Portland when they heard about the divorce. We ordered pizza from the place down the street, drank wine from actual glasses instead of solo cups, and arranged furniture in a space that finally felt like mine. No shared history in these walls. No memories of arguments or cold silences or Instagram photo shoots designed to make our life look better than it was. Just clean, empty space waiting to be filled with whatever came next. Cara showed up with a housewarming gift wrapped in tissue paper. Inside was a coffee mug, simple white ceramic with black text. She believed she could, so she did. I held that mug and felt my eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Hey," Cara said softly. "You okay?" "Yeah." I wiped my eyes. "It's just, thank you. For being here. For not judging me when everything fell apart." "Nothing fell apart," Cara said firmly. "Something that wasn't working ended. That's not the same thing." That night, after everyone left and I was alone in my new condo with boxes still unpacked and furniture not quite in the right places, I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows watching city lights reflect off the dark water of Elliott Bay. And I felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of rightness. Like I was finally standing in a life that actually fit. 6 weeks into my role at Western Biofarm, I closed the deal that changed everything. Pacific Northwest Health Systems had been in negotiation for 8 months before I arrived. A sprawling network of hospitals and clinics across Washington and Oregon that represented exactly the kind of strategic partnership the company needed. The previous VP had made progress but couldn't close. Budget concerns, procurement hesitations, internal politics on their side that kept pushing the timeline. I spent 3 weeks building relationships with their decision-makers. Site visits to their facilities. Long conversations about their pain points and operational challenges. Custom proposals that showed exactly how our products would solve their specific problems. The contract was signed on a Tuesday morning in a conference room overlooking Puget Sound. $4.2 million in annual recurring revenue. Multi-year partnership with expansion options. Richard called me into his office that afternoon. "That deal you just closed?" He was smiling. "That's VP-level work. That's exactly why we hired you. The executive team noticed, by the way. Your name came up in senior leadership meeting this week. Keep this trajectory and you'll be running Western Region within 2 years." My first commission check hit my account Friday morning. $47,000. I stared at the number on my phone screen, sitting in my new condo with coffee and morning light streaming through those big windows. $47,000. More than Jasper had made in the past 4 years combined. I used part of it that weekend to furnish my condo properly. Not the performative Instagram aesthetic Jasper had curated for our queen and house. The artfully distressed furniture, the carefully arranged coffee table books nobody actually read, the throw pillows that cost more than they had any right to. Instead, I bought pieces I actually liked. A deep blue couch that was comfortable instead of photogenic. A dining table made from reclaimed wood by a local craftsman. Artwork from Seattle artists who were actually selling their work instead of posting about their creative journey while contributing nothing to household expenses. The condo started feeling like home. Monday morning I did something petty. I updated my LinkedIn profile with my new title and company, then wrote a post. Excited to start this new chapter as VP of West Coast Operations at Western Biofarm. Sometimes the best opportunities come from unexpected transitions. Grateful for everyone who supported me through this journey. Professional. Positive. Completely true. But I also knew Jasper would see it. According to Vanessa, who was still connected to him on social media despite my repeated suggestions that she unfollow him, he'd been checking my accounts obsessively. The response was immediate. Within an hour I had 50 comments from former colleagues congratulating me. Industry contacts I hadn't spoken to in years reached out with messages about potential collaborations. Recruiters started sliding into my DMs with opportunities at companies I'd only dreamed about working for 5 years ago. My notification count went from 0 to hundreds. One comment stood out. From Patricia, my former regional manager who'd sat in that glass conference room 6 weeks ago while HR eliminated my position. Congratulations, Eloise. They're lucky to have you. We certainly were. It was a small acknowledgement that my layoff hadn't been about my performance, and having that validated publicly, by the person who'd been there when it happened, felt better than I'd expected. 3 months after the divorce finalized, I was in a strategy meeting when my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Have you seen Jasper's Instagram lately? I hadn't. I'd muted him the day I moved out of Vanessa's apartment and hadn't thought about his social media presence since. You need to look, her next text said. Trust me. During my lunch break I unmuted his account. The narrative his recent posts told was stark. Photos of him moving into a studio apartment in Northgate, one of Seattle's less desirable neighborhoods, far from the curated aesthetic of Queen Anne. Posts about simplifying and embracing minimalism, with images of a nearly empty apartment. No furniture except a mattress on the floor. No artwork on the walls. No carefully arranged breakfast spreads or workspace inspiration shots. Just empty space and excuses dressed up as philosophy. There was a GoFundMe campaign pinned to his profile, supporting creative entrepreneurs facing housing insecurity. Current donations. $150, and I recognized his mother's name as the largest contributor. Then I saw the post from 2 days ago. A long caption about how divorce had taught him about the illusion of security and the importance of building something real instead of relying on corporate safety nets. About how losing everything had forced him to confront his authentic self. The comments were brutal. Someone had clearly shared receipts, screenshots of his old posts calling me useless and embarrassing, screenshots of his Instagram story from the day I got laid off. People were tearing him apart in the replies. One comment in particular made me laugh out loud in my office. Bro, you called your wife embarrassing for getting laid off while you made $11K a year and she paid for literally everything. The math ain't matting. I closed Instagram, blocked him again and went back to work. Because that's the thing about building something real. You don't have time to watch other people's foundations crumble. You're too busy building your own. 4 months after the divorce finalized, Richard called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. Got a question for you, he said, closing the door behind me, always a sign the conversation was significant. How do you feel about San Francisco? I was confused for a second. Context. He leaned back in his chair with an expression I'd learned to recognize over the past few months. The look he got when he was about to propose something big. We're opening a regional office. California market is exploding and we need someone to run it. Significant salary bump, full equity package, relocation assistance, complete autonomy to build the team and strategy from the ground up. He paused. Interested. I didn't hesitate. Very interested. Over the next hour, Richard outlined the opportunity. Western Biopharm was expanding aggressively into California. The state represented 30% of their target market but only 15% of current revenue. They needed someone to establish a presence, build relationships with major healthcare systems, and create a team that could sustain long-term growth. The position is Senior Vice President of Western Regional Operations, Richard said. $240,000 base, performance bonuses that typically add another $100,000 annually, stock options that could be worth serious money when we go public next year. You'd have complete authority to hire your team, set strategy, build this office from scratch. It was exactly the kind of career-defining opportunity I'd been building toward for 15 years. The kind of role that would have been impossible to even imagine when I was sitting in that glass conference room 5 months ago watching my previous career dissolve. Take the weekend to think about it, Richard said. But we both knew I'd already decided. I accepted the position Monday morning and spent the rest of that week putting machinery in motion. First priority, my Seattle properties. I called Claire, the real estate agent who'd helped me buy the downtown condo. I need to sell 2 properties. Fast. How fast? 30 days if possible. She didn't miss a beat. Send me the addresses. I'll have listings up by end of week. The Queen Anne house, the one I'd bought at 26, the one that had been mine all along despite Jasper's attempts to claim it, went on the market Thursday. We got 3 offers within 4 days. I accepted one for $890,000. I'd bought it 9 years ago for $420,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and closing costs, I walked away with over $500,000 in profit. The downtown condo I'd purchased just 4 months earlier listed for $600,000. An all-cash offer came in at $650,000 within 72 hours. Between the two properties, I was walking away with over $1 million in liquid assets. Meanwhile, according to the Seattle Gossip Network that still occasionally filtered through Vanessa, Jasper had just launched his third GoFundMe campaign and was posting increasingly desperate content about supporting authentic creatives. The irony was so perfect it almost didn't feel real. Vanessa came over the weekend. I started packing to help me sort through what to keep, what to donate, what to sell. "You know what's amazing?" she said, wrapping my good dishes in newspaper. "6 months ago he tried to convince you and everyone else that you were worthless, that you couldn't hold down a job, that you were dead weight. I remember. And now you're walking away with over $1 million and a promotion most people only dream about." She looked up at me. "I hope he knows. I hope someone tells him exactly what he threw away. He'll figure it out eventually. Will that feel good? When he does?" I thought about it while I packed books into boxes. Honestly, I don't think I'll feel anything. That's what's weird. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. "That's growth," Vanessa said. "That's what closure actually looks like." My last week in Seattle, Vanessa insisted on taking me out for goodbye drinks. "And I know exactly where we're going," she said with a smile that suggested she'd been planning this. We ended up at that rooftop bar in Capitol Hill, the same place where Jasper had humiliated me at Connor's engagement party 18 months earlier. The same place where he'd gotten progressively drunk and bitter, where he'd dismissed my career while bragging about his friend's success, where something fundamental had broken between us even though I hadn't fully recognized it at the time. We sat at a table near the windows with views of the city lights, and I ordered one of those $22 cocktails without even checking the price. "You know what the crazy part is?" Vanessa said, raising her glass. "He really thought you were the one who needed him." I clinked my glass against hers. "He did. Right up until the moment he realized I didn't." "Do you think he's figured it out yet? That he made a massive mistake?" "Probably. But it doesn't matter anymore." We spent the next 2 hours talking about everything. The layoff that had felt like the end of the world, the Instagram post that had revealed who Jasper really was, the divorce papers that had ultimately set me free, the VP position that had proved my worth, and now the San Francisco opportunity that was opening doors I hadn't even known existed. "What do you think he'll do when he finds out?" Vanessa asked. "About San Francisco, about the promotion, about all of it?" I shrugged. "I have no idea. And honestly, I don't care. That's the beautiful part. His opinion of me doesn't matter anymore. It never should have mattered as much as I let it." "I'm going to miss you," Vanessa said, and her eyes were shining. "San Francisco is a 2-hour flight. You can visit whenever you want." "I know. But it won't be the same." "No," I agreed. "It won't. Because I won't be that person anymore. The one who needed somewhere to stay while her life fell apart. I'll be someone who built something new." We finished our drinks and walked out into the Seattle night. The air was cool and the city lights reflected off low clouds. "You're going to be amazing in San Francisco," Vanessa said at her car. "I hope so. I know so." I moved to San Francisco on a Saturday morning in late spring. The drive down I-5 was long but meditative, hours of highway cutting through Oregon's green forests and California's golden hills, the landscape changing as I left one life behind and drove toward another. My new loft was in Soma, a renovated industrial building with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Twice the size of my Seattle condo, with enough space for a proper home office, a living area that could host dinner parties, a bedroom that felt like a sanctuary rather than just a place to sleep. I spent the weekend unpacking and arranging furniture, hanging artwork on brick walls, setting up my office with views of the city skyline. Sunday evening, I stood at those massive windows watching the sun set over San Francisco Bay. The water turned from blue to gold to purple as light faded, and the city lights started coming on one by one. I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been over the past few years. The 26-year-old who'd worked 70-hour weeks to afford a house with a view, who'd believed that building something tangible meant success. The 30-year-old who'd married Jasper thinking she'd found a partner, someone to build a life with, not realizing she was really just funding someone else's Instagram aesthetic. The 33-year-old who'd sat in that glass conference room and watched her career dissolve, who'd driven home to a husband who called her useless before she'd even processed what happened. And now this version, 34 years old, standing in a San Francisco loft she'd bought with money she'd earned, about to start a job running an entire regional office, walking away from a marriage that had tried to define her worth by someone else's standards. I'd lost a job and a husband in the same week. And somehow, impossibly, I'd ended up here. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Hope the move went smoothly. Looking forward to seeing you Monday morning. Big things ahead. I smiled, set my phone down and turned back to the view. Big things ahead. Yeah. I was ready. Monday morning started like any other. Coffee at my desk, reviewing quarterly projections for the California market, preparing for a 10 o'clock meeting with our executive team about expansion into Southern California. Then a LinkedIn notification popped up on my screen. Message from Connor Matthews. I stared at the name for a long moment before clicking it open. Hey Eloise. I know this is random, but I wanted to apologize for the stuff I said during your divorce. Jasper painted a very different picture of your situation and I didn't question it. I saw your recent promotion. Congrats. You clearly landed on your feet. Anyway, sorry for being a dick. I read it 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. Surprise first, I hadn't thought about Connor in months. Then a flash of anger remembering that rooftop bar, his engagement party, the way he'd encouraged Jasper's narrative about my failures. Then something closer to indifference. Part of me wanted to respond gracefully. To accept the apology, be the bigger person, demonstrate that I'd moved past all of it. But a larger part of me remembered sitting at that table listening to Jasper trash my career while Connor nodded along. Remembered the Instagram comments from Connor's account supporting Jasper's post about how embarrassing I was. Remembered how quickly their entire friend group had turned on me without bothering to ask for my side of the story. I closed the message without responding. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some apologies come too late to change anything that matters. I went to my 10 o'clock meeting and didn't think about Connor again. 6 months later, almost a year after the divorce finalized, my assistant Sarah knocked on my office door with a confused expression. Someone sent a meeting request through the company website, she said. Wants to discuss partnership opportunities. But the email seems personal. Forward it to me. The email signature made my stomach drop. Jasper Hartwell, founder and creative director, Authentic Brand Collective. I deleted it immediately without reading the body text. The audacity. The absolute audacity of reaching out through my professional channels. Of thinking I would want anything to do with him after everything. Of believing he could just waltz back into my life asking for favors. If anything else comes from that address, delete it, I told Sarah. Don't forward it to me. Got it. 2 weeks later, Sarah mentioned she'd deleted 2 more emails from the same sender. Then another the week after that. I assumed that would be the end of it. But the 4th email had a subject line desperate enough that Sarah felt obligated to show it to me. Please, just one conversation. I'm sorry, she said. I know you said to delete them, but this one seemed, I don't know, different. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Eloise, I know things ended badly between us, but I'm trying to build something legitimate here. I've got real clients now. Real revenue. I just need some strategic guidance from someone who understands corporate partnerships. Please. Just one conversation. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. I read it twice, trying to process the cognitive dissonance. The man who'd called me useless and embarrassing, who'd served me divorce papers while I was still processing a layoff, who'd publicly humiliated me on Instagram. That man was now begging me for professional advice. What do you want me to do with it? Sarah asked. Give me an hour. I sat with the email open on my screen, considering my options. I could ignore it. That was probably the smart choice. I could respond with exactly what I thought of him, every angry thought I'd had over the past year and a half. That would feel satisfying in the moment but accomplish nothing. Or I could do something else. Something professional and final that would close this door permanently. I drafted my response carefully, editing it 3 times before I was satisfied. Mr. Hartwell, thank you for your inquiry. Unfortunately, our partnership criteria require a minimum annual revenue of $2 million and verified market traction. Best of luck with your future endeavors. Eloise Brennan, SVP of Western Regional Operations. Formal. Professional. devastating in its politeness. I hit send and felt a small flicker of satisfaction. His response came through within 5 minutes. That's it? After everything? You're really going to pretend we weren't married? I stared at the message and something in me shifted from satisfaction to something colder. I could remind him that he'd served me with divorce papers. That he'd called me useless on Instagram. That he'd contributed 7% of our household expenses while living in a house I'd bought and paid for. That he'd questioned my worth and my value and my entire existence as a professional, and then had the audacity to ask me for help the moment his own ventures started failing. I could say all of that. Instead, I blocked the email address and deleted the entire thread. Because the best response to someone who treated you as worthless isn't a detailed explanation of everything they did wrong. It's refusing to give them any more of your time. 3 months later, Vanessa called while I was reviewing contracts in my home office. I know you said you didn't want updates about Jasper, she started. Then why are you calling? Because this one is too good not to share. I sighed. What? He started a Patreon. For his podcast. The one about deconstructing capitalist productivity culture that has 78 followers. How many subscribers does the Patreon have? 3. And I'm pretty sure one of them is his mother. I shouldn't have laughed. But I did. There's more, Vanessa said. He tried to reconnect with some of his old design clients. You know, the ones he had before you got married? They're all declining. Word got around about how the divorce went down and nobody wants to work with him. How did word get around? Connor actually. Apparently, they had a falling out after Connor tried to ask you for coffee when he was in San Francisco for work and you didn't respond. Jasper accused him of trying to get with you. Connor said Jasper was delusional and the whole thing exploded. Connor told everyone the real story about the divorce. The Instagram post, the financial situation, all of it. I didn't know Connor was in San Francisco. He sent you a message. You didn't respond. I saw it. I didn't think it warranted a response. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. You've really moved on, haven't you? I have. How does that feel? I thought about it, looking out my office windows at San Francisco glittering in afternoon sun. It feels like closure. Like that chapter of my life is completely finished. And Jasper? Does it feel good knowing he's struggling? Honestly, I don't feel much of anything. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just nothing. He's become irrelevant to my life. That, Vanessa said, is the best revenge of all. After we hung up, I went back to my contracts. I had a meeting in an hour with a healthcare system in Los Angeles about a potential $8 million partnership. I had a team of 30 people across 3 offices counting on me to close deals and build relationships and lead with clarity. I had a life I'd built from the ground up after watching my previous one collapse. And somewhere in Seattle, in a studio apartment in Northgate, Jasper was posting on Instagram about authentic success while struggling to afford rent. The contrast would be funny if I cared enough to find it amusing. But I didn't. Because that's what real closure looks like. Not dramatic confrontation or public humiliation or carefully crafted revenge. Just complete and total indifference. And honestly, that felt better than any revenge ever could. The email from Pharmaceutical Executive magazine came through on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. Ms. Brennan, we're doing a feature on emerging leaders transforming regional operations in the pharmaceutical industry. Your name came up repeatedly in our research. Would you be interested in being profiled for our January issue? I read the email twice before responding. A year and a half ago, I'd been sitting in a glass conference room watching my career dissolve. Now a major industry publication wanted to profile me as an emerging leader. The interview happened in my San Francisco office on a Friday morning. The journalist, a woman named Patricia who'd been covering pharmaceutical sales for 20 years, asked thoughtful questions about my approach to building teams, my strategy for entering new markets, the accounts I'd closed in California. I noticed a gap in your resume, she said carefully. You were at your previous company for 12 years, then there's a 3-week period before you started here. Can you talk about that transition? I'd prepared for this question. The company eliminated the entire West Coast division as part of a broader restructuring. 300 positions across 5 states. It wasn't performance-based. The division I'd built was actually one of their strongest revenue generators. But corporate decisions don't always reflect operational reality. How did you handle that professionally? I took about 2 weeks to process and strategize. Then I accepted an offer I'd already been considering. Sometimes unexpected transitions create opportunities you wouldn't have pursued otherwise. She nodded, scribbling notes. That's a great perspective. The photographer arrived after lunch and spent an hour capturing different shots. Me at my desk with the Bay Bridge visible through the windows, me in our conference room reviewing projections, me standing by those floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at San Francisco Bay. Give me confident but approachable, the photographer said. You're a leader, but you're also someone people want to work for. I thought about that direction. Confident but approachable. A year and a half ago I'd felt neither. Now both felt natural. The magazine arrived at my office 3 weeks later. Sarah brought it in with my morning coffee. You're on page 42, she said, grinning. It looks amazing. The spread was 2 pages. The main photo showed me at my desk with San Francisco visible behind me, looking competent and professional in a way that felt authentic rather than performed. The article detailed my track record, the accounts I'd closed, the team I'd built from 3 people to 30, the strategic vision I'd implemented for California market expansion. There was one paragraph about my career transition that mentioned I'd overcome organizational restructuring to land my current role, but it was framed as evidence of resilience rather than failure. Eloise Brennan represents a new generation of pharmaceutical sales leadership, the article concluded. Her ability to build relationships, develop talent, and execute strategy makes her someone to watch in the years ahead. I read it 3 times, then set it on my desk and got back to work. By end of day, my LinkedIn had exploded with notifications. Former colleagues congratulating me. Industry contacts I hadn't spoken to in years reaching out. A headhunter from a Fortune 500 healthcare company asking if I'd be interested in discussing future opportunities. I responded to a few messages, declined the headhunter politely, and framed a copy of the magazine to hang in my office. Not because I needed external validation, but because it represented something important. I'd rebuilt myself on my own terms and people had noticed. My mother called that Saturday morning. We weren't close. She was from a generation that didn't talk openly about emotions or personal problems, but her voice on the phone sounded warmer than I'd heard in years. I saw your magazine article at Dr. Patterson's office, she said. I didn't know you'd been promoted again. It happened pretty quickly. I'm proud of you. The words came out stiff, like she wasn't used to saying them. I know the divorce was hard. I know losing your job was hard. But you didn't let it break you. Something in my chest tightened. Thank you. I never liked Jasper, she said suddenly. I should have said something, but I didn't want to interfere. I thought he was taking advantage of you financially. The way he never seemed to work but always seemed to have opinions about how you should live your life. Why didn't you say anything? Because you seemed happy. Or at least you seemed like you thought you were happy. And who was I to tell you otherwise? I stood at my windows looking out at San Francisco Bay, phone pressed to my ear, and felt tears building. I wish you had said something, I admitted. Would you have listened? I thought about that. Probably not. Well, you're better off now. Anyone can see that. After we hung up, I sat on my couch with my coffee and cried. Not sad tears exactly. Just tears from the release of tension I hadn't realized I was carrying. My mother wasn't prone to emotional revelations or praise. So her words carried weight that a dozen congratulatory LinkedIn messages couldn't match. He was right. I was better off. That evening I met some friends for dinner at a wine bar in North Beach. Claire, who ran operations for a biotech startup. Marcus, who did corporate strategy for a hospital network. Jen, who worked in medical device sales. We'd met through various industry events over the past 6 months, and slowly became actual friends rather than just professional contacts. Can I ask you something personal? Claire said after we'd ordered our second bottle of wine. Sure. What happened with your divorce? You've mentioned being divorced, but you've never talked about it. I'd been carefully vague about the details with new people in San Francisco. Didn't want to be defined by my failed marriage or seem bitter. But tonight, with wine warming my blood and these people who'd become real friends, I felt like being honest. So I told them everything. The layoff. The Instagram post. The divorce papers served 3 days later. The settlement that left him with $6,000 while I walked away with over $1 million in assets. The VP promotion. The move to San Francisco. All of it. When I finished, Claire just stared at me. That's the most badass thing I've ever heard. Marcus raised his glass. To ex-husbands who do us the favor of showing their true colors before we waste any more time. We all toasted and I realized something unexpected. I was grateful. Not grateful that it had been painful. Not grateful for the humiliation or the betrayal or the months of legal maneuvering. But grateful that it had happened when it did, in a way that made the path forward so crystal clear. Because if Jasper had been smarter, more subtle, less cruel, I might have stayed longer. Might have convinced myself things could improve. Might have wasted years trying to fix something that was fundamentally broken. Instead, he'd shown me exactly who he was in the span of one Instagram post. And I'd acted accordingly. Today, I'm sitting in my San Francisco office reviewing projections for next quarter's expansion. Ironically, part of our growth strategy involves opening a satellite office in Seattle. Which means I'll be back in my old city occasionally for business. I wonder briefly if I'll run into Jasper. At a coffee shop or a networking event or just walking down a street we used to walk together. I wonder what I would say if I did. And then I realize, nothing. I wouldn't say anything at all. Because the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or public humiliation or even private satisfaction at someone else's downfall. The best revenge is just this. Sitting in a corner office I earned, leading a team I built, closing deals that matter, living a life that's authentically mine. Jasper wanted me to fall apart after the layoff. To prove his narrative that I was useless without my corporate job. Instead I got promoted. Twice. He wanted to take half of everything I'd built. To cash in on years of supporting his creative journey. Instead he got $6,000 and 30 days to vacate. He wanted me to need him. To come crawling back when the reality of being alone set in. Instead I moved to San Francisco and built something better than anything we'd ever had together. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away with your dignity intact and building something extraordinary while they slowly realize exactly what they threw away. My phone buzzes. Sarah with a reminder about my 3 o'clock meeting with a healthcare system in Sacramento. I close my laptop, grab my files and head to the conference room. As I have work to do. And honestly, that's more than enough for me. If this story of quiet victory had you feeling every twist and turn, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Eloise signed those divorce papers without a word, knowing exactly what was coming next. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling